there's a mic. Okay, great.
Yeah, no problem.
Hello, South Philly and Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for joining us for GRASP's candidate meet and greet for Lieutenant Governor candidates. Tonight, first off, I want to say a lot of thank yous. First to Adobe Cafe for always being so welcoming and offering us this space. Please remember to tip your servers. I'd also like to thank the candidates for taking time out of their very busy schedules to come and meet with us. I'd like to thank you all for attending, because this wouldn't be possible without all of our voters and civically engaged people. And also for thank you to all the GRASP volunteers, because it takes a lot of work to put these kinds of events together, and thank you. So tonight, we're going to start off, I'm going to explain a little bit about who is GRASP. Then we're going to get into some candidate introductions, and then some questions that we have prepared. We've sent a questionnaire that we crowdsourced some questions for to each of the candidates prior to this event, and so we're going to have them answer a few of them throughout the rest of the program. And then after we wrap up, we're going to have plenty of time for you to meet the candidates, talk, and ask them any questions that you'd like to hear answers to if they weren't already asked. So who's GRASP? GRASP, we're a group of friends and neighbors engaging and connecting our community and our representatives. And we stand for Grassroots Advocacy for South Philadelphia. And we have a new Twitter, if you'd like to follow us. We tweet out a lot of videos of these types of things, so if you ever can't make it to one of our events, just follow along on Facebook Live or YouTube. So I'm going to turn it over to Karen to talk a little bit about the race.
Excellent. Thank you, Dana. And hello to Facebook Live. So that is what the camera is for. So hello to our online audience. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. I just want to make sure the volume levels are okay. We are a volunteer organization, so if you like this event and it is of value to you, we do have a lovely shoebox that you can put in $1 or $2. That just helps us kind of keep it going. So just think of it as a small gift to your community. So the position of Lieutenant Governor, it's a 4-year term. They are also the president of the state Senate and the Board of Pardons, and they are also on the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Council. So thank you very much. Did I get it all right?
Exactly.
Excellent. So candidates in attendance today, we have the current Lieutenant Governor, Mike Stack. We have Dr. Nina Ahmad. We have Kathi Cozzone, and John Fetterman, and Ray Sosa. So those who were unable to make it tonight, but they were invited, was Jeff Bartos, Kathleen Coder, Peg Luksick, Diana Ire Vaughn, I'm losing sound, okay, and Ken Krawchuk. All right, definitely stay in this lane here. The order for tonight's event, each candidate will do a 3-minute stump speech. After all the stump speeches, then they will have an opportunity to answer up to 3 questions. They will get 2 minutes per response, and the time will begin at the end of the question. So, after the questions, everyone will have time for an informal meet and greet. So if you want to get to know one of the candidates a little bit better, now is your chance. All of the candidates answer questionnaires, as Dana had said. So those responses will be emailed to you directly. So be sure that we have your email address. See me, Dana, Steph, Chris, who probably checked you in. If we do not have your email address, you should send it to us and we can send you that link. For the candidates, there will be a timer, and our timer will raise a blue card when you have 30 seconds left, and we'll raise an orange card when your time is up. So we will start with the candidates' stump speeches first, before turning it over to Steph for questions. And I believe we were going to start in alphabetical order, so Dr. Nina Ahmad, we'll begin with you. And actually, you should just okay.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Yes, it is a pleasure to be here. You are the model of civic engagement. This is what we need for the entire Pennsylvania. I think there's a question in the questionnaire about what models we're going to use, and I think GRASP is one of those models that we need to take the magic that you have here and take it across the state to say what makes people get so civically engaged, what makes people tick. So my name is Nina Ahmed. I also answer to Ahmad. I am just interested that you're calling my name. It's a tomato. So yeah, that's, I'm running for lieutenant governor for a few reasons. One, I want to be that face of Pennsylvania that is pushing back on number 45 to say we are going to push back on bigotry and hate, and Pennsylvania is going to stay a warm and welcoming state. Two, I want to restore integrity and accountability in this office. I think it's really important. We're accountable at all times to our constituents and those who we serve. And third, and maybe the order should have been started with that, is we have no women in executive statewide office. We have never had a person of color ever in executive statewide office. And I think it's time that Pennsylvania sent the signal loud and clear, not just to the rest of the country, but the world, that we are here and we are going to thrive and enter the 21st century with guns blazing. And that's why I'm here. So I was the Deputy Mayor for Public Engagement for the City of Philadelphia, serving under Mayor Jim Kenney. It was a great job. My job was to make trust, build trust between community and its government. We're public servants and we're accountable to the communities at all times, particularly to communities whose voices are not heard. And that's another very strong reason why I want to be running, is to bring people's voices to the table who have not been heard before. So, we just had the incident of Starbucks that happened right in our backyard. And we need to be very clear and honest about talking about these issues. What are those systemic changes we need to make so everybody has a seat at that table, everybody has a fighting chance. I want to make sure Pennsylvania is a place where people don't have to choose between getting health care and keeping their lights on. We want to make sure children are able to go to school without getting worried about gun violence, whether inside the school or out. I want to make sure that we are moving to clean energy, because that is the way forward. We have to gradually move people over, upskill, rescale, and make sure we make that investment. Any change in this country has come through governmental investment that shows the path to other investors. We've got to do that. And very importantly, I want to talk about reducing our mass incarceration problems that we have, not just in Philadelphia County, but across. I don't believe in private prisons. I want to make sure we don't use human misery to benefit from. So my time is up, and I'll be around. There'll be more questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Kathi? Yeah, you'll do the stump speeches, yeah. Okay.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us all here tonight. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Congratulations to you all for the work that you do. Grassroots folks are so very important, not just to the city of Philadelphia, the Commonwealth, but to this country. I think that we have seen, definitely since 2016, how important it is that we all stick together, work from the bottom up, then we can make real change. So my name is Kathi Cozzone. I'm a Chester County Commissioner, and I am serving in my third term, so this is my 11th year. Despite being in the minority, I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of Commissioners. I'm the first Vice President of our state association, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Democratic Caucus of that same association. I'm an accountant by trade. My last job, the job that I had before I was elected, was a senior management role in corporate accounting for a publishing company in Pennsylvania. So I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. I'm going to put this down for 3 reasons. And they're the 3 reasons why I think I'm the best candidate in this race. Number 1, for the last decade, I have watched as Republicans in the legislature have decimated funding to counties for us to provide critical services to the most vulnerable people in our communities. Not only is it morally wrong, it has created systems where we are spending far more money than we need to solve the problems that exist in our community. So while the Republicans in Harrisburg are patting themselves on the back saying that they haven't raised taxes, the reality is that school districts and counties across this Commonwealth have been raising property taxes to even try to accommodate for the funding that is not coming from the state. So I believe that local government, county government needs a voice in Harrisburg, needs a seat at the table, and I believe the executive branch is where that voice needs to be, and I believe that that voice should be me because I truly understand the complex relationship between the state and funding critical services in our communities. The second reason that I'm running is, I said earlier, I'm the vice chair of the board despite being in the minority, and that's because I've earned the respect and the trust of my colleagues, and quite frankly, vice versa. So I know that I can be that partner for Governor Wolf, to work with him, to work across the aisle, to make sure that we're advancing his priorities, which in the end are the priorities of all of us in this room. And finally, I believe that being a leader is greater than the job description. So you heard a little bit of the job description of Lieutenant Governor earlier tonight, but I think that there's a real opportunity for us to be able to use that office to shine light on the issues and challenges that we face here in the Commonwealth, as well as bring people together to solve those problems. I have done those things in my own community, and I only have 30 seconds, so I don't get a chance to tell you about all of them, but I have done those things in my community, things that don't fall under the description of being a county commissioner, and so I know that I can be an effective lieutenant governor day one. So thank you all for the opportunity to be with you this evening, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Well, yeah, we thought you were going to come late, so we have to go last. But Ray, do you want to go? Or, oh, there you go.
I'm just trying to prove I knew my alphabet.
Hello, everybody. I mean, it's an honor to be here. Without grassroots efforts, I wouldn't be here because you need to compete with massive resources. And as a newcomer in local politics, it's tough. But what I tell everybody, first of all, let me introduce my wife. She's Dr. Sosa. She's the chair for my campaign. We're expecting our first kid, so we're very, very proud. Thank you. What I remind everybody is that this is a job interview. You need to come up with things that are relevant for the position. You need to come up with experience that's solid. I've been appointed by 3 U.S. governors for positions that are exactly what the lieutenant governor does. And I'm the only one that's running right now that has been appointed by 3 governors in a 14-year period. So I do have the experience in criminal justice system, in emergency management, coordination. I'm an expert in statewide interagency cooperation. So I do think I have the qualifications for the position, and I added 4 positions to what the lieutenant governor already does. And that's help for prisoners. We need to educate them. They come out with a degree. Our recidivism is crazy. We can have that. That's at a cost of hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay, there's no budget that can be balanced that way. Second, help for our schools. We're disorganized for 2 generations. We're underfunded. We need a formula to permanently fund our schools by legislation, so it's guaranteed. And our kids are actually worried about their security 50% of the time. Furthermore, we're graduating kids in certain districts from high school that have this a 6th grade ability. So we have to change that, okay? Because they'll never have the funding under the Keystone exam structure. My 3rd position has always been help for our farmers. We have the best farmland. I come from a family of farmers, okay? They don't have the right infrastructure. The governor agrees. They need broadband. They need roads. They need taxation that's specific to their crops. And finally, what do I think that I have, that I'm the best candidate right now? Because I have the right private sector experience that's financially sound with the right state experience. So I'm the very first lieutenant governor that's a Hispanic candidate in the ballot. So we're very, very proud. Thank you so very much, and I'll be around for questions.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Stack. I'm the current Lieutenant Governor. I want to thank you guys for all you're doing. And I grew up in Grassroots, and it's important stuff, and let's keep working together. My most important issue, I'm constitutionally the chairman of the Board of Pardons. I started a program which is a national model on criminal justice reform. It's called Pathway to Pardons, and we show people how to get a second chance. We have squandered the lives of so many Pennsylvanians. We've been so regressive on criminal justice reform. We have to change. We're working on doing that. In my term as lieutenant governor, we have granted more pardons and commutations than the last 3 lieutenant governors combined. And I have a surprise tonight because I didn't know he was going to be here. There was a gentleman who was sentenced to life in prison without chance of parole, who I met many years ago. One of my honors was to be able to vote to commute his life in prison sentence. His name is Thurman Barry. Thurman Barry is with us tonight. God bless you, Thurman Barry. We need to do more of that. We're doing it. And I want to do that more. We're just catching on with criminal justice reform, and people are finally getting it. An important thing that I've also done is been president of the Senate. I've broken 3 ties as president of the Senate. All 3 bills, one was going to gut public education by $2 billion. Another was going to prevent unions from organizing. And a final one was going to make sure that we went the wrong direction in criminal justice reform and made sure that people serve their full mandatory prison sentences. I was happy to kill that legislation too, and I want to continue to fight for those kinds of bills in Harrisburg. I'm a veteran. I served in the military, and I have a veterans task force, and we're helping veterans who are still dealing with homelessness, mental illness, drug addiction, joblessness, and suffering. We're finally getting through, finding a way to get these services to those folks who have given us so much. And we can do even more. Lastly, every vote should count in Pennsylvania and in America. What could be more important than every vote counting? I was pleased to be one of the people who led the charge on that gerrymandering reform, the most corrupt process that takes away the individual's right to vote, that the Republicans had set up. And we thought it was a long shot when we were in this lawsuit with the League of Women Voters. But surprise, we won the case. I was able to help propose maps, and hopefully in this next upcoming election, we'll win 5 or 6 more Democratic seats. If you think it's a good idea for every vote to count, and everybody I think should, I hope you'll support me in this election. And I've been a partner for Governor Wolf. When he declared a state emergency on the opioid crisis, as his chairman of the Emergency Management Council, not all lieutenant governors get that role. Governor Wolf asked me to serve in that role. I was able to get that emergency declaration ratified in a bipartisan way so we can continue to fight the opioid epidemic. Thank you so much, and I hope you support me, and I appreciate all you do.
Hello, everybody. I'm John Fetterman, and it's a delight to be here. I don't take good pictures, but that's a particularly unfortunate one. So try to think of me as I am versus that shot. I just have to say I came the furthest tonight to have the opportunity to speak to you. I'm a mayor in western Pennsylvania, just outside of Pittsburgh. So 300 plus miles, it's my distinct honor and privilege to be able to talk to you about my campaign tonight. But I have to confess something that might just end my chances right now. And I have to say that I'm a Pittsburgh Steeler fan. I believe in giving it to you straight, though. Not going to pander. And that's, I think, important. Well, hey, I want to. I really do, because it's great to win Super Bowls. I know we've won 6 of them. Sorry, jeez. Anyway, I'm going to pitch you on the progressive angle of my candidacy and on the pragmatic angle of my candidacy. Progressive. I have been a 4-term mayor of one of the poorest, most marginalized communities in the state, Braddock, Pennsylvania. Has anyone heard of it? Braddock, Pennsylvania was where Andrew Carnegie built his first steel mill. Braddock, Pennsylvania would go on to literally help change the world. Braddock, Pennsylvania would literally go on to lose 90% of its population and suffer in a way that most communities can't possibly imagine. And I showed up in Braddock in 2001, before the planes hit the Twin Towers. I've been there because I really wanted to make my professional life about confronting and combating the gross inequality that we have in this society. And I came there after graduate school to start some programming to help young people get their lives back on track and get their general equivalency degrees and get jobs. And that program, which is in still operation today, 17 years later, is now responsible for 1,000 young people getting their their general equivalency degrees. And for 3 to 4 years, I was that program director, helping young people. But then 2 of my students were gunned down a couple weeks apart. And I decided that something has to change. I wanted to get active, and I decided to run for mayor. And it may not escape you right now that I don't exactly look like a typical elected official. and I was facing a big challenge. And the only reason why I decided to run for mayor is because I had the support of the young people that I worked with, and they knocked on doors for me. They registered to vote, and I won that first election by one single vote. And I would go on to be elected to 3 separate terms as mayor, and we would take on some of the most difficult, intractable issues that we as a country can face. People ask me what I'm most proud of. 5.5 years without a homicide in my community. We didn't have a functioning restaurant within our borders. Today they have 4, including one special enough that Anthony Bourdain came. In 2018, it's all on the line, folks. And we need a lieutenant governor candidate that can bring those Democrats that left us in 2016 back in 2018. And my broad state appeal speaks exactly to that. And my pitch to you before I go is help me help Governor Wolf bring those Democrats that left us in 2016 back in 2018 so we can turn Pennsylvania blue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates. So now we're going to move into the questions. We started a little late, so we're just going to get to 2 of them. Just a little background. We did formulate these questions by open call, by email, and social media. If you want a chance to get in on that process for any of the upcoming events that we'll have in the future, please make sure you're on our email list so that you have that opportunity. We did pare this down by noticing some broader themes that came up a lot with these questions, and you'll have the opportunity to ask these guys anything you want afterwards. Also, on our emailing list, you'll have the opportunity to read their full responses to these questions and all of the questions that we did ask them. So first up, and just a note, Lieutenant Governor Mike Stack may have to leave us early, so we are going to be asking him his questions first. Okay, so your first question is about constituency and representation. How will you specifically affect and represent GRAF members and the constituents of South Philadelphia as a whole in your position?
Great question, and my whole life in public service as a state senator for 14 years representing constituents, I think the most important thing any elected official can do is be responsive to the folks that are actually out there trying to get things done in neighborhoods and communities like Grow. And so I've always been someone who not only do I do the things that my job requires in the constitutional frame, I've never been afraid to get on the sidewalk or in the street with a bullhorn, to be with activists, to be with organizers, to stand up for justice and righteousness, and to help coordinate grassroots movement. My whole career has been about that. So I've been an extension of that as Lieutenant Governor. If you ever need me to stand with you, to help on an issue, I will be there, and I've done that with many other groups across our great city, and you're doing tremendous things, and I would love to stand with you and get things done. And I think that's probably one of the most important things I can do as an elected person statewide is if my voice helps give power and influence to your cause. I mean, that's the most humbling thing in the world for me, and I want to be there with you. Thank you.
Okay.
Clap.
The next, it's still through you. The next question is on the
I
economy.
might do a mic drop, but go ahead.
So, in the last year, the homestead exemption was expanded via ballot initiative for municipalities to take on that option. What do you think is a fair tax structure to provide for all residents of the state?
You know, it's something that we've been arguing about for maybe a couple decades. And when Governor Wolf started in his budget, he wanted a more equal way of taxing folks. And you know, I think any tax system we set up has got to be one that has equality in mind. And I think any system where people who are wealthier that somehow proportionally pay less taxes than people who are struggling to make a living, I think you have a very screwed up tax system there. So at the end of the day, the structure should be a fair one. And you know, we've got to take into consideration how we're going to fund education in a fair way. We've had other bills where people wanted to do away with property taxes entirely, and You know, the only problem is you still have to find a way to pay for public education, which should be a very high priority for all of us. So one of the other things that I think I have a good skill at is getting folks to find a middle ground. We all know where we disagree, right? Between Republicans and Democrats, maybe sometimes in the Democratic Party. Why don't we explore where we agree? That's the challenge. Let's find the areas where we agree. And I always work toward doing that, and I've been able to be successful with that, and I would do that with taxes as well.
Thank you. And just as a reminder to you guys, Dana is keeping time, and she will give you the 30-second warning when you're running out. It's 2-minute responses for maximum. Next up, we have Nina Ahmad. And you actually get the same question first on economy. With the homestead exemption expansion in mind, what do you think is a fair tax structure to provide for all residents of the state?
We should look at universal basic income, and we should investigate that, because non-income based taxes is what we should go towards. It's going to take a while. We have to first get people on board, and my whole mantra when I was in the deputy mayor's office was bringing people to the table, and no decision about me without me. So we need to make sure the communities understand what a universal basic income might be. What does that look like? Where will the money come from? Because we allocate income tax to a lot of different issues that serve communities. So when you look at things like initial public offerings, if you look at taxing those, people have to understand what that means, right? We have to look at things like patent, getting taxes from patents. We have to look at options that are not within the realm of everyday folks. So again, no information information equals power paradigm must be the basis of discussing any change in tax structure. Excuse me. But I believe that investigating the universal basic income is something we should do. That is a very progressive way of looking at things, and that's what I would have a conversation about.
Thank you. And if you guys could just make sure that you're speaking into the...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
The next question is on education.
Mm-hmm.
What do you believe Pennsylvania's public school system, do you believe Pennsylvania's public school system needs improvement? If so, how would you improve it?
Yes, it needs improvement. I think everybody would agree on that. Not only does it need improvement, we need equity in how we improve that. So actually Governor Wolf's budget reflects the formula fund, the new formula fund, which is great. However, it only addresses 6% of the total public education dollars. So only 6% is passing through this fair system, right? Rest of it is not. So we really need to work to make sure the entire education budget goes through that fair formula. First of all, again, going back to this information equals power paradigm, people have to understand what a fair formula is and what makes up a fair formula. You have different factors in it based on if you're coming from a school district that has a lot of English learners in it, then you have a certain amount of allocation for that. If you're coming from a district that has a lot of special ed needs, then you have a different allocation for that. So community must understand what those factors are and what makes up the number that you decide that is going to come to a community. If we need to apply this formula across the board for all public education dollars. We are not there yet. So that's very important to do. I also think we have to move away from testing. We need to teach the whole child. And we must have project-based learning, because I have a 17-year-old who's my education consultant. She has told me, Mom, high school has been a waste because we're just learning facts without applying them. So I think that we need to move away from that, and we need to have teachers have much more power. The teachers are the people who are the guardians of our children. And we must value them in society. We must have a society that has a narrative change around not only how we value them, but how we pay them, right? And that is going to be something that we need to work with so that we have equity for people who are teaching our children. So those are the things that I think we need to work on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Kathi. And your first question is the same. It's on education. Do you believe Pennsylvania's public school system needs improvement? If so, how would you improve it?
Well, it absolutely does need to be improved. And the first thing we need to do is stop testing our kids to death and stop relying so heavily on this idea that somehow standardized testing, which isn't good for every child, is indicative of the success of a teacher or a school district. We have to make sure that that funding is appropriate. A couple of candidates talked a little bit about the different ways that schools are funded, the funding formula. Here's part of the problem. Part of the problem is we rely so heavily now on property taxes. So in the mid to late 80s, the amount of funding that was coming from the state was roughly 50% of a school district's budget. It's now about 35 or 38%. So now we've also pushed a significant amount of the cost onto property taxes, which unfairly disenfranchises communities that don't have a great property tax base, particularly those that don't have access to real commercial properties, which provide revenue without really providing the extra kids. We do have to have the ability for our teachers to be able to teach to the unique needs of each kid in the school. I'm a product of public schools. My son is a public school student. Here's the thing, there are a lot of programs that are available for kids with special needs, although the funding is not enough. There are a lot of programs that are available for kids who excel, although that is not equal across school districts across the Commonwealth. But there are a lot of kids also in the middle who sometimes maybe need a little extra help, but the teachers don't have a lot of time in the day to be able to address that because of the constant teaching to the test, because of the ways that they have to pay attention to the other kids in the class that have those requirements as well. So we have to be able to make sure that our schools are well funded and our teachers have a real opportunity to teach. I'm sorry, I went over.
No, you have 30 seconds.
I tried.
Perfect. We're going to move into gun control. So what specific policies and changes will make a realistic difference in the gun control debate?
Well, first of all, nobody needs an AK-47 or AR-15 to hunt, period. We need to really ban those kinds of weapons which were designed very, very specifically to kill people. They are military weapons and that is what they were for, so we need to do that. We need to start having real conversations about this. We need to, there's too many people on both sides of the issue kind of sitting and put their stake in their sandbox and not really willing to listen to the other side. We need to be able to make sure that we're doing that. But I will also tell you, while the Republicans on this issue nationally and locally are saying it's a mental health issue, my response is, well, A, it's really not statistically, but B, then why do you keep cutting funding for mental health? It's absolutely outrageous. So, there are multiple solutions to this. One is making sure that we do have the right opportunities for troubled youth and adults to make sure that they have supports and services in the community, but we need to stop blaming them for the problem. The problem is that we don't need military-style weapons for average citizens. It's very simple. We also need to ban the bump stocks. Anything that can make a weapon go from being able to only kill one person to be able to kill multiple people needs to be banned. It's insane to me that in this day and age that this is what we're still looking at, that we're still looking at kids who are scared to go to school. We're talking about arming our teachers. How crazy is that? I don't know about you, but when I send my kid to school, I want his teacher to teach. I don't want his teacher to be licensed in a firearm, and oh, by the way, maybe someday a kid gets a hold of that firearm and then we have another accident. So we need to take this issue very seriously. There are a lot of common sense ways to approach this issue, and if I'm your next lieutenant governor, I will make sure that I'm advocating in that direction.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Ray Sosa.
Oh, that was two.
Yeah.
That was fast two.
We're going to stick with the gun control question now. What specific policies and changes will make a realistic difference in the gun control debate?
First of all, getting rid of the gun show loop, and getting rid of the actual loop that allows private sales without being recorded. That's the first, because it allows for a huge traffic of guns, and then all of a sudden we don't know where they came out from. Okay, I've seen best practices in 4 different states, and we're lagging behind. Second thing, we have to make sure that we have stringent controls on who gets allowed a gun permit. Okay, mental issues and a history of violence gets an automatic turn down. It doesn't mess up the Second Amendment, but it controls who has the guns. That's very, very important. And then military-style weapons, semi-automatics, attachments that make them automatic are supposed to be outlawed. They don't belong in civilian society. So the lieutenant governor has a huge pull on that one. And then we could go against gun violence till we go blue in the face, but we have to help our Democrats get to our Senate to change the mix. Why? Because right now it's just a suggestion. If you don't have the right legislatures, it's not gonna happen. Okay, so that's very, very important. But those are my visions on how to do it.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to move into environment and infrastructure. Do you believe that state government should play a leading role in reducing fossil fuel consumption? If so, what would that role be, especially as it relates to personal transportation choices?
Well, first off, the government has a massive transportation hub, okay? And those are the units. We should lead the state in converting everything that we can into green energy. That's the first. Then, business follows money. If as government, we don't change the structure of incentives, they will never migrate into green energy. You have to make it so that it makes business sense to migrate from fossil to green energy. And again, we have to change the mix so that we can enforce it by legislation, okay? But I do think we have a massively talented brain pool in Pennsylvania, and we can be the leader in the nation in green energy creation. And fracking can be regulated. Fracking can be limited. It's an industry that actually employs 65,000 people. So, but it can be migrated to the right best practices, and that's my view, that it can be done.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have John Fetterman. And we're going to stick with the environment and infrastructure theme. And same question, do you believe that the state government should play a leading role in reducing fossil fuel consumption? If so, should that role be, what should that role be, especially as it relates to personal transportation choices?
Not only does it have a role to play, it is the central driver in moving our economy to green energy. New technologies, there's no financial incentive for people. The government has to take the lead to encourage that. So, we as a country, we as an economy, we as a Commonwealth have to acknowledge this fact that climate change is an existential threat to our existence here on this planet. We can't be arguing whether or not it's snowing in April and climate change isn't real. We have to get with this idea that most of our energy has to come, hopefully within the tail end of my lifetime, be coming from green and renewable sources, in our Commonwealth. And to the extent that the state can affect that, that's really the prime driver as far as that's concerned. So I would be proud to be at the tip of that spear. I was selected by the Environmental Defense Fund back in 2010 to work with the Obama administration as the face of the campaign to pass federal legislation for cap and trade to reduce the carbon output across the country. It didn't pass, unfortunately, but we worked with the Environmental Defense Fund and the steelworkers and the Sierra Club because we as a country have to treat climate change as a real existential threat, and the best way that we can address that is migrating towards a green energy economy and a green energy production here in the Commonwealth.
Okay, and then just because we realized how important education is to our community down here in Southeast Philly, we're going to end with an education question. Do you believe Pennsylvania's public school system needs improvement? If so, how would you improve it?
Well, the answer is it depends. It depends what your zip code is. Is public education broken in Pennsylvania? It depends what your zip code is. If it's this zip code, it's badly underfunded. If it's this zip code, my zip code at Braddock, 15104, it needs a lot of new resources. It needs a lot of attention. But if it's Mount Lebanon, let's say a school district out by me, it's the highest rated school district in the country, or in the state. Ask those parents, is there a problem in public education? Hell no. My kid's going to Yale. Why? There's no problem in public education. Public education, the issues we have in there come from the inherent inequality that we have in our society. And until we address those inherent drivers of inequality in our society, we are simply tinkering on the margins and to make public education what it needs to be, the great equalizer that gives everyone from any background of any family an equal chance to strive and succeed in our economy. This idea that you can get rid of property taxes, or we're going to do this or do that, it's all just a shell game. Education is expensive. It needs to be one of our core responsibilities as a state government, and we all have to get on board and realize that it's going to be expensive, it has to be equal, and it has to be continuously improved, and the teachers have to be involved instead of stop being blamed for the shortcomings of the students and the system. So from my fundamental aspect, again, do public schools need to change? Depends on your zip code. And for me, I've spent my entire professional career fighting for those marginalized zip codes like my own. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for answering those questions. I do want to note what our final question was going to be, even though we don't have time for it, just to give you guys a talking point if you want to talk about it. As a member of a potential minority party for state senate, what will you do to affect change in the legislature? So that is and then I'm going to hand it over to Karen just for some wrap-up notes before we can mix and mingle.
Yeah. Can everybody hear me, or do I need the mic? I'll take it. All right. So just final thank you for spending time with us. I know you guys are traveling all across the state, and it's a big state when you drive that way across it. Another plug for the Adobe. I see some of you are eating and drinking. Good, good. Tip your waitresses. The candidate questionnaires will be emailed. See one of us, give us your email. You can follow GRASP, or Grassroots Advocacy for South Philadelphia, on Facebook. We now have a YouTube page, so these videos that we've been collecting, we have some from the 3rd and 5th congressional districts as well. They're all up on the YouTube page. The more subscribers we have, we can actually get a custom URL. So you won't have to search for Grassroots Advocacy for South Philadelphia, but you have to do that for right now. So that is that. You can follow us on Twitter, and Election Day is Tuesday, May 15th. So, you have one of these lovely folks to vote for. GRASP meets, we usually meet the first Thursday of every month. However, in May, to try and get a jump start on the month, particularly that the election will be so close, we're going to have our meeting here at the Adobe on Wednesday, May 2nd at 7 p.m. So if you want to join that, that's open to whomever lives in South Philadelphia. Come join us, grab a beer, and we'll have some conversation about all the different topics. So, and again, we are volunteer driven, and we're always looking for more volunteers. So if you have a skill set, like John here on the camera, is volunteering his time to help us out with some particular skills that he has. So if you have a particular skill you'd like to loan to us, if not, throw a buck or two in the box, and we'll maybe have enough dough to pay somebody to do it.
Where's the box?
Chris will show you the box. The box is over there by all of the political swag. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you again for the candidates for your time, effort, and energy. And come meet some constituents. Thank you.